Welcome to Don't Roll the Dice. I wanted to do that on IP. Today, this is going to be the continuation of our series of IP in the tabletop industry. And today we have a wonderful panel with us. We have Laia Gonzalez. She is the founder of Wonderbow Games and the board game publisher. Together with her husband, back in 2021, they founded Wonderbow. But for a long time, they had their own marketing agency and creative hub. Laia and her husband have been doing all kinds of marketing campaigns, film, photo shoots for clients like Audi. So, I just not gonna say that one because I can't pronounce it. Knife Company, okay, and many others, right? But today she is coming as she's joining us to talk about counterfeiting in the tabletop industry and her experience. Also with us, we have Eric Perot. He is a trademark and copyright attorney with Gerber IP in Washington, D.C. He registers, protects, and defends trademarks and copyrights for a diverse set of U.S. and international clients. Eric loves all things tabletop, especially working with makers, designers, and publishers to protect their games and IPs. And finally, from the office, Holly Lance. She is an attorney advisor on the enforcement team in the Office of Policy and International Affairs. And she focused on anti-counterfeiting and anti-piracy issue. My name is Ramon Mercado. I am a supervisory patent examiner in 3600 and an avid board gamer here in the USPTO. And it really is my pleasure to set this up so that you guys out there, both creators and consumers of tabletop, can learn more about the intellectual property in a tabletop and how to protect yourself. So with that, I'm gonna let Eric take it away and start our conversation.
Thank you so much, Ramon. I also have some fancy dice that I had next to my desk. So I'll try to get as good a sound effects as you had, but I'm not sure if I'll be able to pull it off. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. I think that this audience is likely a lot of different groups of people. I think there'll be some folks from the industry, there'll be consumers, there'll probably also be some other lawyers here. So I think we'll have a little bit for everyone. But my kind of role with setting everything up before we get to Laia, so we can actually hear kind of someone's experience with these problems, and then Holly, who's going to tell us how what the government's role is with this as well. Mine is just kind of set up what we're talking about today, and what we're talking about is counterfeiting. So the idea that a counterfeit is, a lot of the times we think of a counterfeit as like a dupe, or it's inspired by, or it kind of looks like. This is not that. This is that someone is making an unauthorized reproduction of a registered trademark. And most people think of a counterfeit as like a fake Gucci bag on like a street in New York City, but I think most of the time it's a lot more insidious. A lot of it's like counterfeit toys and counterfeit products, they closely mimic the real thing. There's some tells that we'll talk about later of how to identify that and how you can kind of become more informed on how to identify counterfeits, but they're made without any regard to regulations or quality or work conditions or a variety of other things. And so when we're talking about counterfeits, this is not kind of someone's using a similar name to me or something like that. I think that's very important. We got to protect that as well. But this is really this idea that there are folks out there who are creating reproductions without the maker's permission and are selling them as if they are legitimate products, and the harm that that causes and what we can do about it. And I think to that point, who does it hurt? And I think businesses, you can probably think how that hurts them. A publisher, especially a small publisher like Laia's, that each time a counterfeit game is sold, that means that a real game was not purchased from her. All of her hard work, all of her art, all of the things that went into making this game, that is money that does not get sent to her. It gets sent to some stranger who just took it all and reproduced it. So I think that one's pretty easy where we can see where the harm occurs. But I think it also occurs to consumers themselves. And I'm going to have a little bit of a soapbox time that because we live in such a digital world that on one hand, we've got everything digital and everything's online, and then we have a blossoming industry of pure analog. A board game, the idea is you've got pieces, you've got tiny little tiles, you've got giant things of dice that, and this is a three-sided dice that has several numbers repeated. So it's still eight-sided, but so that kind of specialized things, you get to touch them, you get to click them together, and I think that that is lost when you buy a counterfeit. You are buying cheaper quality. You're buying not what the artist and the designer and all the folks that went into making uh, this game. You lose that, and it becomes something that the experience is cheapened. And I know games have played a big part in my life. And Ramon mentioned he's a lifelong gamer. I've got a 10-year-old son, and we fought dragons together, and we fought we've rolled dice, and all this kind of stuff that I think is so important. And so I think that is where it hurts consumers. It's also made in unsafe ways. It's unregulated. The materials are questionable. The money also goes to funding other illegal activities, and often the labor used is in very poor conditions, traffic labor, things like that, that you don't see when you purchase a counterfeit game, but that's all in the background. I think there's two main tools that we're going to be talking about today to protecting against counterfeits. Those are trademarks and copyrights. And a trademark is anything that is a brand. It's a logo, it's a design, it's a name. But in this context, we're actually going to be talking about registered trademarks, because that is, as far as a counterfeit goes, you need a registered trademark to claim that something is a counterfeit under the counterfeit laws. There are things you can do for non-registered trademarks when it comes to infringement, but for counterfeits, it's very important that you have a registered trademark and that it's registered with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office for U.S. enforcement. The other part is copyright. So we're talking about designs, text, we're talking about photos, all things that were created by someone, by a human, and that are being unauthorized reproductions are being made of that. In some cases, rules, for example, game mechanics cannot be copyrighted, but your rule book, for example, the way that you describe the rules, the way that you describe examples, the photos you put, the layout that you use, all of those could be copyrighted. So it's kind of this 1-2 punch, and Leia's going to talk about her experience with kind of using both of those to get counterfeiters taken down from different websites. But it's important that we know that both of those are powerful tools, and that you should have a good appreciation for how to protect them and when. It's a lot to go into today, so if you have questions about that, I think there's prior presentations that the PTO's done. They have an excellent boot camp series that if you are a legal professional and you're new to the practice, or you're curious, find one of those boot camps. They'll talk about the basics. We're going to go more into how to use those to then go after some of these bad actors. And we'll talk about a few other things, like some language you should know. There's one that I think is a very important thing for us all to know. It's called FLGS, your friendly local game shop. I think that one of the best ways to battle counterfeits is to know who you're shopping from. And as the holiday season comes up, if you live in the Washington, D.C. area, you've got access to one of the best board game stores in the country, in my opinion. And so you look them up. They're in Capitol Hill. And know who you're buying from. So FLGS is a good one to know, but I think also phrases like trademarks, copyrights, customs and border protection, we're going to talk about briefly about how that's another tool that publishers can use to stop the flow incoming of potential counterfeits. But we've got a lot to get into, and I want to hear Leia's experience, and so I think I'll hand off from there.
Beautiful. Thank you, Eric. So with that, with the wonderful background information, then we can jump into Lyle's um, story of woes. So please take it away.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm Laia, and I'm from Germany, actually, and our company is based in Germany. We are a two-person company, my husband and I, and we've been doing board games for a couple of years now. I was invited to talk because I think that some of you may have heard about the story of us creating a board game called Kelp. It's Shark versus Octopus. Yeah, it's the one that you can see behind. I also have a little photo to share. So I'm going to share it now, and I hope you can see it. I think you can see it now, right? All right. So this is the game that we have created, Shark versus Octopus, a two-player game when one person plays a shark and another person plays an octopus. It's a duel, and it's very, very unique. And we've been working on this project now for 2 years. We worked for a whole year before we launched our Kickstarter campaign. We traveled around the world, I would say, to attend different board game conventions to promote it. We spent a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of money promoting it. We ran a lot of ads before we started, and luckily our campaign was very successful, and we ended up collecting 1.4 million euros, which is, I think, around about $1.5 million, which is something that has absolutely changed our life. It has been the reason that we are now actually working on Wonderboard full time for a couple of months, also because we don't have the time to do anything else because everything has changed so drastically. And when we were kind of at the high point of it, like our campaign ran 28 days, so we're like 26 days into the campaign. We had received a ton of support, and we were just celebrating and hoping and wishing that it ends soon, just because it's very exhausting to run a crowdfunding campaign as well. I was Googling our game on a daily basis because you want to know, like, are there some content creators talking about your game? Is there something you can share with the community and stuff? And yeah. So a couple of days before the campaign ended, I found out that someone was actually selling our game online. And I was like, what's that? That's weird. Why is it now being sold on Amazon, like on every Amazon marketplace that you can imagine? So I reported those listings. I do have a trademark registered, of course. So I reported those. We had at the beginning, I think, like 12 listings or something like that across 3 or 4 different marketplaces. And 4 or 5 days later, when we were actually in Belgium celebrating that we had finished the campaign together with the game designer, we were sitting there having dinner. I received emails from Amazon saying, yes, we have taken down the fake listings. And I thought, life is good again. So it wasn't, because apparently when one listing was taken down, 30 others popped up. And yeah, so from that moment on, I spent almost every day Googling the game, reporting listings on Amazon, on eBay, on Frugo, on some kind of marketplaces I hadn't even heard before. It turns out those people actually ran ads on their fake listings. So they were actually spending more money to sell our fake game. And we thought, honestly, because I'm going to show you the next picture, we have really pretty components, in my opinion. We have really chunky mahjong tiles that are really heavy with unique icons, and we have really pretty art, and we've made a really pretty insert and really pretty dice and everything. And we have a lot of different components for the game. So we actually thought that those people were just going to grab money and then disappear, because who is going to go into like the project of copying such a game that has so many different components? But then January 4th, I believe it is, I was actually playing a game with my husband and his son, and I received an email from someone saying, thank you for delivering the game. Can you please send me the rule book? That wasn't included. And I was like, who is actually sending out a game like a few weeks after the campaign ended, when we were actually supposed to deliver 10 months later? So someone was actually producing and receiving it. And I also have a picture to show you the difference. This is what they sent, which is a very ugly pizza style box with nothing printed on the back. They didn't even really have a board. They just put a poster in it. They didn't put the right amount of components in it. They didn't even put a rule book in it, which is like the easiest thing to copy because we had a PDF online, but whatever. So it's clearly not really people that like games and want to profit of it. It's just people that see this is a successful project. Let's copy it before it actually launches on the market. They did steal our images from a software called Tabletop Simulator. So whoever knows a little bit about game design, they for sure know this software where you can test your prototypes and everything. We did have a version of the game online on Tabletop Simulator. And yeah, you are able to download all the images. We didn't have high resolution images on there. So they actually took all the images. They exchanged all the text on the cards because it wasn't really high resolution, so they had to type everything again. They put in a lot of grammar mistakes in it. So that's why we noticed that they have been actually working on the graphics, and they didn't really care about having a complete game at all. So it was just cash grab from the beginning to the end, kind of. And yeah, when we actually received this email, we thought this is not a good situation for us, because we've been working so hard on this project, and we have 20,000 people that are trusting us in this campaign, and now all over the world we have people just copying it. So it means there are also going to be a lot of people that don't know if this is real or not, because all the listings have just copied our images from the campaign. So if you don't really pay attention, you think you're buying the real thing, and you don't really know, oh, there has been a crowdfunding campaign. So yeah, we thought we have to do something about it. I had already spent days and days and days and days and days reporting all the listings and fighting with all the Amazon bots and eBay bots and Frugal bots and whoever responds to those emails to get things taken down. But now it was on another level, because they were actually delivering product. And not only did they fool customers, they also gave me more work, because I had to respond to all those people that were buying the fake stuff and were wondering what this is all about. So we actually sent an update to our 20,000 followers on, the backers on Kickstarter. And we must say we really have the best community there is, because they went to war with us. Like within 24 hours, there were so many listings taken down. So many listings were just also blocked from Amazon or eBay or something, because they had too much traffic on them. So our backers just understood, like, wow, this is really an unfair situation. And they just decided, let's go for it and let's help. And we are really, really thankful that they did, because otherwise it wouldn't have been possible to stop it. And I must say, it was stopped for a while, and now that we are delivering the game again, now they are back at it again. So it's not that it stopped and then now it's happy life and let's move on. Like, they're still at it a year later, still copying and delivering our game everywhere. But we were lucky enough, I believe, to be the first board game that was counterfeited before it exists, which makes it kind of a news. So then we had kind of a lot of publicity. We were in some radio shows, and NPR talked about us and stuff like that. So a lot of people could actually like hear about our story and maybe don't buy the fake copy. So that's kind of like a good situation within the bad situation, because I believe that if this happens to us, that must happen to so many other companies. And luckily we could say it's not the real thing, because it hasn't been produced yet. Well, now this story is over, because we have actually manufactured and delivered, but we had like a year's time of actually defend this story and have a really clear communication about it. Yeah, but this is actually what happened, and it's just really, really sad that it happens, I must say.
I think that's such a good example of, yeah, I think when most people think of counterfeits, they think of like these massive brands getting counterfeited. And what I think a lot of people don't realize is that in the niche, not niche, but the smaller tabletop hobby that's not, the mass market games that are in everywhere, 30,000 backers is unbelievably good. That is probably better than 99% of most of these kind of hobby board game things. And so, but at the same time, when you compare that to something like, Uno that sells whatever millions of things, that, those are what you typically think would be counterfeited. So the fact that they're targeting this niche audience that, with Kickstarter, I'm not sure if our audience is familiar, it's like your crowdfunding, but it also produces a lot of anticipation, and people, if they miss the Kickstarter, they want to get the product, and it kind of even hypes people up even more, and it becomes this whole other thing. Yeah. So where a counterfeit, if it's available out there, I can absolutely see a person saying, well, someone's selling it, it must be available. So it goes back to that insidious nature of these counterfeiters, is that they're preying on that exact feeling of oh, I want this game
Yeah.
now. How do I get it? And that's painful.
Fear of missing out, right? That FOMO.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not only a games edition. We were the first board game, but I talked to the head of games at Kickstarter, and I talked to another marketing agency that do a lot of crowdfunding consulting and stuff, and all kinds of industries besides board games, like when you have a new tech product on Kickstarter or something like that, if it's successful, chances are really high that it's going to be counterfeited before the actual product comes out. So I think
That's exactly what I was going to say. I don't think it's limited to games. I think
Yeah.
No,
there's
no,
a
not at all.
double-edged sword from
Yeah.
crowdfunding.
Yeah, I think now they saw, oh, I can do a board game, which is basically for them just like a box and a bit of cardboard, and that's it. Because they didn't really use the materials that we are using, obviously, but it's probably pretty cheap for them to copy board games generally. So yeah, that's just another industry they are focusing on now.
And I think it's great though that you offer the tabletop simulator version, and I think that it cuts against this argument that people just want a game. If they just want a game, then they'll get the counterfeit. They're not going to care what comes with it, because if they wanted to do that, they could print their own. They could, a lot of companies do print and play. If the idea was people just wanted the game because the game is fun, there's ways to do that I don't think most publishers would really mind. If you want to print out your own copy of it and play with little pieces of paper, like most people aren't gonna, I think, complain about that because they're fans. But these folks are clearly trying to get a product that is the real thing, and they're not getting it.
Yeah. Also, what is funny is when we had the prototype phase, like in our game, we have a shark miniature that is swimming around the kelp forest trying to find the octopus, which is hidden behind one of the blocks. Yeah. And for the prototype phase, we used a Lego shark because we didn't want to invest into making a miniature before we had made the project, because we didn't know how successful it would be. And making such a mold costs a couple $1,000. So we just used a Lego shark. Yeah, only the mold.
Right.
And those counterfeiters put a fake Lego shark in their counterfeit copy. Not even a real Lego shark.
Oh, so no, it wasn't even Lego brand.
No, it's not Lego. It looked
wow.
like Lego.
Some
but it
other
wasn't
brand.
Lego.
That's amazing. Yeah.
It wasn't some other brand. It was just fake.
Yeah.
And
And we had someone that works at Lego back our campaign as well. So we told them as well. It's like, well, that's
it branched to another one. We do have a few questions on the chat. I don't know if you can answer this one, but do you know where some of those counterfeits came from? And I'm sure Holly and Eric on the next part of our conversation will go deeper into this conversation. But do you have any idea of where those counterfeit? Is there a particular place that is more common or less common for your particular example?
Well, in our case, it's like I had people that bought the fake and returned it, and I asked all of them to send me the return labels from this Amazon listing.
Quote unquote,
Yeah, exactly. And it's a Chinese company, and it was always a different name, different address, different like symbols. I don't know, I can't speak Chinese, but I put it in Google Translate. But the same province, always the same China province. So we definitely know that it comes from there. And I actually have someone that I know through like Facebook groups and stuff that lives not in China, but I don't remember where, but this person was in a Facebook group and someone was bragging about working at the factory that made our fakes. And then this person told me, and then I told him like, hey, you have to nail him down and try to find out which company it is. And then it disappeared. So yeah, whatever. But yeah, it's somewhere from China. But I know that it's not our factory. Like so many people have said, oh, your manufacturer has leaked the files and stuff. No, I know that there are a lot of really good companies in China that do board game production, and they are never going to risk this because they are so dependent on like European and American business. So no, we know that it's not them.
Beautiful. And I do know we have another question here, but I want to save that one for the next conversation because I think Holly and Eric will have better information for you guys. So with that, Holly and Eric, what can we do to protect ourselves as consumers or ourselves as producers of creators?
Yeah, well, I think we want to talk about both. I mean, hearing Laya's story, I was heartbroken. Obviously, it's really tough because in my position, I'm not able to give legal advice, but I did talk to her. I coincidentally also did talk to Amazon as well. So I was able to find out a little bit about what was going on behind the scenes. But this is a real challenge, and I'm just going to say it like as it is. I don't have a great solution here. I think we can have a conversation about this, about how we should move forward? I mean, is the answer just to always buy in brick and mortar stores? I guess, but that's I'm not sure if that's 100% going to be the solution.
And even they have to trust their distributors, because if they're
Well,
getting it from a
sure.
source that thinks they got a good deal from somewhere, they end up in a very similar space, and we've seen that before too.
Right. I mean, I think supply chains have really changed a lot, particularly since the COVID-19 pandemic. I mean, look, a lot of stuff comes out of China, good and sort of bad, counterfeits as well as legitimate products. And I think there were a lot of disruptions and changes to the supply chain that I don't think we've certainly fully recovered from, and may not. So, okay, so folks who are on the publishing side, the designing side, what are kind of some things to think about? Well, I know Eric talked about trademark registration, and of course, I am from the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, but the advice is, register early and often. If you know you have a product that's coming out, you can file what's called an intent to use trademark. This gives you a long buffer, maybe in the range of maybe 3 years from filing, to actually begin using your mark in commerce, to actually begin selling your game. This is, a upfront. I mean, it's not an inexpensive, it's not a super pricey thing. It's about $300, 200 and gosh, Eric, do you know the notice? Is it 225 or 275 for a trademark application? I've got to look. It's somewhere 250.
Oh,
Thank you,
Holly,
Charles.
you've been out of private practice for a while.
I've been out of private practice too long to know the pricing. Well, I'm afraid they're going up soon too. I did see that email.
January 18th.
So current price is 250. Sorry guys, it's going to probably be like 275 then. But again, if you can register your mark, this is certainly something you can do. The way I like to think about it is, with an unregistered trademark, you've got the shield. With a registered trademark, you have a sword. So what are some of these privileges you have with a registered trademark? One, you can record your trademark with all these platforms' brand registries. We talked about Amazon. eBay has their own registry. I believe it's called Vero. And those companies will allow you to register with them, even if you're not selling on the platform. And they're not going to be charging you for that service either. That is a service that most of the major platforms are providing. It's certainly something that I think, Congress is keeping an eye on in terms of what kind of proactive measures can these platforms take to protect consumers as well as our brand owners. So that's one option. You can also record your trademark with customs and border protection. This is something that is only done, I mean, it's like once every 10 years. It's a separate process from registration. It's something you can do. It's called recordation. So you record your registration with customs and border protection, and you can provide to customs officers training manuals, brand guides. You can even do presentations to really help officers at the border stop infringing goods from coming in. And what's the nice thing is, we don't have this in every country in the world. Our officers have what's called ex officio authority. So they are actually able to take, detain, seize, and even destroy goods without any kind of need for a hearing or even right holder involvement. So this is a great tool for owners of federally registered trademarks. Now,
and Holly, just to kind of piggyback on that, Customs and Border Protection, last time I checked, there were something like 80,000 brands on the customs, like that recorded, of the how many million trademark registrations. And so it is underused, in my opinion. I think we've had clients who have gotten watches that were coming in from the wrong thing. So I definitely think that Customs and Border Protection is a really underused resource for a lot of trademark owners who are dealing with counterfeits.
And I did see that we had an interesting comment come in about pending trademark registrations. And I just want to clarify that is accurate, that the Amazon brand registry, initially you had to have a registered trademark. Now they are allowing pending trademark applications to also be registered as part of their brand registry. So that is, I think as a result, it is somewhat flooded, the trademark register, to be honest, because people are all rushing to apply to register so that they can, go on the brand registry. But that is certainly an option. Now, in terms of consumer education, I know that some companies will give tips on how to spot a fake. I think this is a little bit of a challenge. You don't necessarily want to give counterfeiters a blueprint, but as part of the education, you can also say, here are my authorized retailers, here are my authorized distributors. So if you're not buying on this list, you're taking a risk. The other thing, and I think this is especially important in Laya's situation, she's selling in Germany. a lot of these counterfeits were not coming to the United States. Some were, if I recall, but a lot of them were being sold in different countries in Europe as well, right? So trademarks are
Everywhere.
territorial.
Mm.
Say that one more time, Laya.
Everywhere. Yeah.
Everywhere. So it was different countries. Now,
Mm.
a US trademark is only going to provide protection in the United States. So it's certainly not practical to register your trademark in every country in the world, but it is good to have a strategy to think about where your trademarks are going to be sold or where they are more likely to be counterfeited, because then you'll have protection in those countries. And then we do have certain, treaties, for example, the Madrid Protocol, that can make it easier to apply to register your trademark in multiple countries. But that is one of those things, and I'm sure Eric would agree, you probably should consult legal counsel in coming up with your best international filing strategy.
Oh, it's such a minefield because whenever I tell a client, they're like, okay, well, I want to register in the rest of the world. I was like, well, which countries? And like, what do you mean? Like, yeah, I was like, no, we got to go country by country for the rest of the world. The only exception to that is the EU. You can apply in a block for the EU. That obviously excludes the UK. So many of the times that is a huge a lot of products move through the UK, so it's important. And so, it's a lot about strategy, and really, I think, Holly, exactly what you said: where you're selling, where you're manufacturing, and where you think you might sell next. I think for board games, especially these kind of hobby games, the EU is very important. They're a huge developer of board games. There's a lot of competition. We registered something for a client recently, got through no problem in the US, and then had a German publisher say, no, we own one of those words, and opposed it in the EU. And the client was like, well, I'm from the EU, but I'm gonna, well, I guess we got it in the US, so that's great. So it was a very strange situation because each jurisdiction, even though there's ways to file in similar ways, there's different strategies for many different countries because of what their requirements are. The US is actually one of the strictest requirements in the world as far as kind of what's required to register a trademark. And so when it comes to being able to register one in Germany, for example, you can get a registration through in, I think I had one in about 6 weeks, and then there's a lengthy time. They basically register it, and then they have an opposition period. So there's different strategies for different places.
That's why we always recommend to get legal representation. Both we recommend it, it's not necessary, but we always recommend it just to be
Lawyerly response, but so true. Now, in terms of doing the actual enforcement work, look, a two-person company is not going to be able to afford. There's a whole cottage industry of vendors who are providing these monitoring services, who will go for you and use AI and other tools to try to find, copies of not only your words, but also packaging and other marks or indicia of your product and take them down for you. But that's not going to be practical for most small businesses. Like, I just want to be very frank about that. So I wanted to throw that out there as an option. But for these small businesses, it is going to be more reactive. I mean, I can't expect Laya, a two-person company, and her and her husband, to be going on every platform every day. I think some of these brand registry programs will help. I do think that they can take proactive measures to have those listings taken down based on keywords and other sort of tools that they're using. So I think as technology improves, this will get better. The other thing I did want to note is that I think you might have to be prepared to do some test purchases. You were, very fortunate that you actually had some of your customers, I guess, or would-be customers, sending you copies of the games so that you can actually confirm that they're unauthorized copies. And I think that's important, because what I've been told by a lot of these platforms is that a lot of the sellers are really just resellers, that they're not so much maybe in the board game industry, but they're getting products through liquidation, or they're getting them these other means and then reselling them. And they say, well, we don't want to take down legitimate product. And I agree. And I think we all benefit from the lower prices and competition. So you really need to be prepared to show them, no, this is actually an unauthorized product. And this is sort of a final piece of advice for this team, the producer designer side, is And it hasn't, I can't say Laya's position has been the best, but I do think this is a game of whack-a-mole. And if you whack down the moles enough, usually they will go to another target. I hate to say it, but that was my experience in private practice. And that's what I've heard, you know, coming from the government side as well. Eric, I don't know if you have any experiences that you can lean on for this.
I had a client who is a very similar experience to Laya that but theirs was a card game in a tuck box. And so the entry level to copying that is about as easy as you can get from an expense standpoint. And she was self-published. She was the artist of her game. She did everything DIY, and it was incredible that she managed to get about 10,000 Amazon reviews. And then the floodgates opened with the counterfeiters who were selling a very specific version of the counterfeit that I can tell every single time because there's tells, and we'll talk about the tells next, but the back of it spelled the name of the company wrong on the actual tuck box. So I could spot it from a million miles away, but I have about 30 copies of this game in my closet in my office that because that's what it took at first because she didn't have a registered trademark yet. And so we were able to actually expedite the process. This is one of the few, so this is actually a great tip for everyone. If you're dealing with this and you need a trademark as quick as humanly possible, it will not be very quick, but it will at least be quicker than waiting in line because there is something called a request to make special, or sorry, a petition. It costs extra and you have to have a very good reason, and active counterfeiting is one of the reasons that they say they will allow you to get reviewed before the normal 6-month pendency that's currently. It was up to at one point about 12 months. And so in about 2 to 3 months, you can get before an examiner and you can get it reviewed. But at that point, the client was behind the ball. And so we had to do test purchases. We did dozens and dozens of them. And the last time I checked this morning, actually, and so far the Amazon listing has been counterfeit free for at least the last 3 weeks. And so it was an enormous amount of effort, and it was worth it for her because of all the kind of this was the entire distribution platform. But I think that that's really difficult when you've got so many different folks that you're dealing with, that it is so much time and effort put into that.
Before we move on to sort of the more consumer end for purchasing games, I did want to give one other tip, and this is something Laia and I discussed, was, you know, a trademark is great. It's a great tool, but also consider other types of IP. I know Eric gave a great explanation before about copyright. So what a lot of counterfeiters are doing is they're simply eliminating the publisher name. So they'll use other keywords so that consumers will still have enough information to mistakenly believe they're purchasing the right product, but they're technically not violating your trademark because they don't use your trademark. So think about using copies of your artwork, your packaging, other materials. And those can, of course, also be registered. That wouldn't be through our office. It's a different agency. It's the US Copyright Office. But unlike trademark, where you have to have a federally registered trademark in order to be considered counterfeit, you don't actually have to register your copyright with the US Copyright Office. There are advantages for doing so from an enforcement standpoint, but that's another avenue that you can work with these platforms on. And I know, Laia, I think you've had some success with that recently, right?
Yes, we did file in the beginning. We filed all the reports under trademark because our trademark was connected to Amazon and it was the easiest to do. And now we actually published a post on BGG on if some of you guys don't know, this is a really huge board game forum. It's boardgamegeek.com, and we posted how to spot a counterfeit if you're trying to buy kelp. Article, and we said, well, if you don't see the logo on the box, it's not our game. After we posted that, they deleted the logo from the box of the listings, so we gave them a hint. But I mean, they would have known anyway. I think another thing that is really important, because I totally agree with you guys that you need the trademark, but I don't want to be a party pooper. Having a trademark doesn't prevent anyone from counterfeiting your product, especially because all the people that counterfeit, or all the listings from our product weren't registered trying to be our publisher trying to be us. They weren't saying, oh, this is kelp from Wonderbow because this is such a well-known brand and we're just going to pretend to be the publisher. They just said this is kelp from the brand named Generic, for instance, or another name that I can't pronounce because it's just a lot of weird words that I put in it. So if you see what they do, especially on Amazon, they just create a bunch of seller accounts and a bunch of listings, a bunch of fake brands, and just upload it there anyway. So if you have your trademark, it helps you fight those, but it doesn't prevent those from existing in the first place. That's
You're right, and that's the thing. It's not going to stop the counterfeiters, but it's a sword. It's
exactly.
going with a sword rather than a shield. So yes, because let's face it, and this is the thing that I think, Eric, you alluded to again before. It is not just happening to big companies. If you have a product that's good, it's going to be counterfeited. I mean, that's the unfortunate reality. So what can consumers do? I think this was also something that was brought up before about sort of being careful where you shop. If you buy directly from the game publisher, brick and mortar stores aren't as fail safe, but those tend to be more vetted distribution channels. If you're buying from a third party, if you're buying from a platform with third party sellers, at least do your best to do due diligence. Is the price normal?
I'll say what Holly and Ramon can't say. If you're buying board games from Temu, you're probably getting a counterfeit. There's
100%.
very few. I'm not aware of any legitimate retailers who are selling through that platform and ones like it that if a board game is $4 and it's typically $15, that's a pretty good tell. I've got some examples because I have done some counterfeit educational things before, but I guess here's a good one. So it's there's things that you can't see through the computer screen. This is a game called Coup. You can see it's got like this shiny background. This is a counterfeit and it has the shiny background. But what you can't tell is that the real one actually has it right in her little tiara thing is also shiny and the counterfeit's not. But the real tell for me was that in the back, it's hard to see, but right there, that is the Amazon transparency symbol that is supposed to, when you scan that code, tell you that it's a legitimate product or not. But when you scan that code, it takes you to a Chinese app. This is not a transparency code. It's a normal QR code that just takes you to a Chinese website that tries to get you to download an app that's not anything to do with Amazon. And so, yeah, it looks kind of, I mean, it's got that shininess. That's like, pretty good to have for a counterfeit copy, but it is something that, the cards themselves, I wish I could like hand them out to everyone on the call. You touch them, you're like, ugh, like this is flimsy. It's even down. I could tell with one of the clients, going back to the one that I was working with, that you could tell by the feeling of the plastic surrounding the cards that it was cheaper quality. It was unbelievable. Just like the plastic she used was soft. It was easy to open. This one was like, you had to like rip it open, and it was so there's those kind of things I think that you get what you pay for with these, and everyone likes a deal. I think I am one of those people that especially during the holidays, you're always hunting for that deal. But when it comes to these games, especially ones that are printed in such small quantities to begin with, you really look for folks you can trust that are actually selling them.
Yeah, and I think, Eric, you really touched on the next point I was going to be was when you get the game, you do have to do almost this careful inspection the same way when you get your rental car, how before you leave the lot, you want to do a walk around and make sure everything's okay. Unfortunately, that's kind of the level it is that we need to take as consumers now. When you get a product, especially if you're buying it from a source that maybe you don't know, maybe the platform you're familiar with, but you don't know the seller. I mean, make sure everything's complete. Is the color off? Is there a stock keeping unit barcode? Is that missing? Do you see the publisher's name? Do you see these fake QR code? I mean, I'm not sure a consumer would see that and say, oh, great, Amazon transparency, love it. They wouldn't even take that step necessarily to take out their phone and see, is this actually going to the Amazon website or in this case, a Chinese app? So, when you open up the game, how does how do the pieces feel? Do you see instructions? There was an example that Laia gave before. Now, what do you do if you do think you have a fake? Well,
Mm.
I mean, obviously you want to report it to the seller and the platform. If you can, I mean, I don't think you want to be inundated, but I think it is good for the game publisher to know. And also, these aren't necessarily things you want to hang on to. You don't, as Eric had also mentioned at the top of this program, the care that's being put into creating these products is not going to be particularly high. It is not going to be lovingly hand done by these workers. There could be all kinds of like disgusting glues or dyes are used to create the fake products. So you just want to be mindfully disposing of them. These are like dirty products.
And it could be
They
unsafe
be-
too, right?
they
I
could
mean,
potentially be unsafe.
yeah.
Absolutely. If there's a dye or something, I mean, you don't know what's in them. So yeah,
My son's
don't
been playing board games since he was very small, and there are some very delicious looking pieces in board games. The game Azul has some of the most, they look like little starbursts. But no, absolutely, if you get a fake copy of that, you don't want that anywhere near your your hands or any kids, because they will probably end up in a kid's mouth and at some point in your ownership of that game.
And we're touching the board game experience is such a tactile experience
Right.
too. So I mean, I'm a fidgeter. I fidget with things as I play. So you're absorb stuff through this game as well, because I think that's a bigger topic for other counterfeits, right? If you're buying children toys that are
Of
counterfeited,
course.
Oof.
but it's also not something that we can discard here in this conversation.
Right. I think the health and safety issues, I mean, a lot of times we're thinking about, supplements or medicines or maybe, yeah, children's toys or clothes. But frankly, what we're putting on our skin, what we're touching, interacting with, certainly anything that could go in our mouths, we need to be really mindful of that. And again, there's no quality checks going on by counterfeiters. They don't care. There was also something Laya said that really resonated with me that I want to share is that, when her customers or would have been customers have come up to her, they're feeling a lot of guilt and sort of shame that they were deceived into buying a counterfeit product. And I did want to say, this is not really the category of goods where people are actively searching out fakes. Maybe people do want to buy fake apparel or fake, accessories. I don't think people are trying to buy fake tabletop games. And it's unfortunately very common. In 2023, the ACAP Center, it's the Michigan State University Center for Anti-Counterfeiting and Product Protection, they found that nearly 7 out of 10 customers had been deceived into buying counterfeit products at least once in the past year. I mean, that's an extraordinary number. So think about it. Almost 70% of people have bought a fake product in the last year unintentionally. So these are ubiquitous. And so there is no reason to feel shame. I myself, I've had experiences where I've purchased a product that I now know was fake. I didn't know it was at the time. I wasn't trying to buy. It was actually a doorbell. I certainly wouldn't try to buy something like that. It's fake. That could be quite dangerous, and really almost was quite dangerous when we tried to install it. So know that this isn't, I feel like I work in the industry and I share it because I think it's important for people to know that this is happening to everybody. So this is not something to feel bad about, but it's something to be aware of. And it's something to be mindful about before you just click buy, because you don't know, where things are coming from.
So I actually want to take this opportunity because I think it's a perfect segue. We have a question here that said, were you able, and this is for Leia, but I think it's for everyone, were you able to get any monetary compensation from the sales of the counterfeit? And you were just talking about this, right? And the answer is no, but I will let you guys
Yeah.
expand on that. Yeah.
Well, we didn't get anything, and I know that some of the customers that bought the fake products, some of them received refunds after they reported, but some of them didn't. So I don't know where the money lands. Either the criminals get it or the platforms keep it. One of both options.
But regardless, you are the
Yeah.
victim here. The person who inadvertently
Not
bought
only
that
the
counterfeit.
customer is the victim as well.
Yeah, exactly.
obviously.
That's what I
Yeah.
meant. I'm sorry, the customer.
Yeah.
Certainly your company, it's
Yeah.
affected, but the customer is the victim. There's no reason for you
Yeah.
to feel shame. Like Holly was saying, you are the victim here. Nobody makes money here other than the
No.
counterfeiters. So yeah.
There's also a
And the-
huge secondhand board game market, that folks buy and sell board games all the time. And I don't think anyone wants to stifle that marketplace. And I think there should be a robust secondhand ability to sell it. And if people are willing to take a loss, they should be allowed to take a loss. But it's a thin line between what Amazon does, kind of opens the floodgates and says, oh, hey, we'll accept everyone. And they're starting to put some restraints on that, I think, and we had talked about this, that there's legislation that's in the works that could force them to do that, and they want to say, no, we don't need to be police, we can police ourselves, which I think is kind of a joke. So I think that there's this balance of having people be able to participate in a free market and be able to buy and sell, and then also just when you have these kind of really just damaging folks kind of trying to take advantage of that. You're trying to find a balance of what Amazon and all these other platforms, what their culpability should be in this as well. But that's a different topic completely, that way of how do you hold people responsible who are profiting from counterfeiting.
It is a
It's
different
tough.
topic, but I think it's only if legislation changes and governments in all different countries do something about it and have platforms like Amazon and other marketplaces responsible, only then this has a chance to stop. Otherwise, I don't think it has a chance to stop.
And not to play devil's advocate here, but I do think, obviously the USPTO, we represent everyone. The platforms are our stakeholders, gamers, everyone, consumers, we're all our stakeholders. I think what's happened is, we've just never had marketplaces like this before that are selling millions among millions of goods. And so the argument is, well, we're really not in the best position, Amazon or eBay are saying, well, we're really not in the best position to know which goods are fake, that we really rely on the brand owners. But then at the same time, the brand owners, particularly small businesses, don't have the capacity to police every listing that's being on every platform in the world. So it's a really tough balance. But that is certainly the argument. And so I think we do benefit from the diversity of goods available. We benefit from lower prices, but at the same time, it can be quite a challenge, particularly for the smaller businesses.
But offering lower prices, you can have lower prices just in a regular marketplace. Like that's what our capitalism is for. Like you have different vendors selling the same product and everyone sells it a dollar less, so you are able to get good deals on it. But the difference from having lower price, like our deluxe edition costs $65, and it's being, in a fake version of it's being sold on eBay for $20. So this is an unrealistic low price, because no reseller, no retailer in the world would sell this for $20 if the MSRP is $65, because we don't sell it to them for $20. So no way they're going to buy it from us and then make a loss on their sale. So that's the difference on that. So if the price is too good to be true, it is too good to be true.
And that's really a big part of what we're doing here today, right? The education part for the consumers as well as the producers. There's a question here that just popped out in the chat. I kind of want to address it. And really, so I'm going to go to Laia first. I'm going to open the conversation, not just Facebook, but what kind of responses did you get from Kickstarter? Because Kickstarter is also, it is crowdfunding, but it's like a social network, right? So in social networks in general, both Kickstarter, Facebook, et cetera, did you get any help from them? What was your experience there?
So because our case got so big, I got to talk to a lot of people that we usually wouldn't have any contact to, I think. So we got to connect Amazon brand registry people and Kickstarter, and I plead to them to please work together in kind of either educating the creators, like what they can do that they don't run into a situation like it. Or what I think the biggest problem with Amazon is, especially in Europe, I don't know how it's in America, but on Amazon in Europe, you can only list a product if you have your product safety documentation. And you only have your product safety documentation if you have produced the product. So you don't have it when you do the crowdfunding campaign. So I wasn't able to do my kelp, the listing, the official kelp listing on Amazon until we actually made the product, which was what people told me like, oh, you should list it before and then it's listed and no one is going to take it away. It's like, but I can't list it because Amazon is going to take it down 30 days later if I don't deliver documentation. So I did actually talk to someone at Amazon asking, can you please do something about it for crowdfunding projects, because we are not able to deliver documentation a month later. We need like at least a year to be able to provide any kind of documentation. So this is one thing. I don't know. They did talk to each other. I don't know if they published anything like a guideline or something. I don't know if they did.
What about
So
you?
Laia, this is just a question. So in that case, was it those folks that were listing Amazon, they just provide fake documentation as well?
I think in the US you don't need it, because when I did the kelp listing, Amazon didn't ask me for that. So,
Okay.
but Amazon in Europe,
Yeah, we
asked
definitely
me
have
for
different
documentation.
requirements in terms of for different
Yeah.
kinds of products.
Yeah, but I am sure the thing is in Europe you get 30 days, but during those 30 days you can already sell. And I think those people just don't give like don't care. They just list it, they sell for 30 days, and if they get taken out, they just make a new account. It doesn't matter. So that's, I don't know if they provide fake documentation, but maybe just for the 30 days they don't need it. So yeah, I think that's that.
Yeah, and a similar thing from the legal side. I'm a lawyer, so I'm going to get a lot less of a helpful Amazon, in my opinion. But I also have realized that there's other tools. You can go after everything that they use to make these sales, because what we're seeing is an increase in these kind of shops that just, whatever .shop, and it's a website that pops up. It's there for about 30, 45 days, gets as many sales as possible, and then nothing ever gets sent out. They steal the credit card information, or they sell counterfeits. And I've actually had success reaching out to the domain name registrar and say, hey, someone on here's doing something illegal. And most of the time they respond saying, well, there's nothing we can do about that. And lo and behold, 24 hours later, it might be gone. So I think that there's still a lot of kind of attacks you can make. Go to the where they're hosting the website and say, hey, someone's using my images, take it down. And a lot of the times you'll get a lot of pushback. A lot of these hosting companies that they use are somewhat shady themselves, and they gravitate towards the ones that have less regulation. But a lot of the times they'll still take action. And I think, unfortunately, having an attorney do that tends to give them a little bit more of a kick in the butt. But I think that individuals should be able to utilize those tools as well, even if they're not as obvious, to say, hey, you got to take this down. This is my work, and remove it now.
And I saw someone in
Yeah.
the chat asked about ads. So if, the game, maybe people wouldn't necessarily organically stumble upon some of these counterfeit listings. It's because they're being advertised other places. And most of again, I'm going to say most because it's going to depend, but a lot of the social media platforms do have, forms that you can fill out. They'll call them notice and takedowns. They'll cover different kinds of IP, including trademark and copyright. And, they will often take them down, provided that you can show that you have priority of use, you're the valid owner of these rights, and that this is an unauthorized sort of advertisement.
Beautiful. So we are almost running to the end of our conversation here today, but it is the holidays. I want to end up in like a positive note, right? So I just have a few questions for you guys. I'm going to start with Laia. The USPTO is America's innovation agency. So the question is, which is the most innovative game you have ever played?
Which is the most innovative game I've played?
Yep.
Ooh, that's a difficult question. Well, I believe kelp is pretty innovative.
It is.
But obviously, I have to say that. There are so many beautiful games out there. I love it when games are really thematic and just draw you in. And I love it when you have surprise elements with the components. And if all the mechanics and components mix well together, I think it's really innovative if you have like special use for special components. So I don't think I can point out one game, but they are like, it's really like such a beautiful industry to be in, and just to see what people are developing and creating every day. It's really nice.
Excellent. And certainly Kelp is a wonderful game. I got it. I played it many times with my kids.
Nice.
I can recommend it for your Christmas list. I don't know if you buy it now, would you get it for Christmas? I don't know. Maybe Leia is going to offer like rush delivery here today. No, just kidding.
Well, I
Eric,
don't think I can promise that because delivery services are like so overworked all around. But yeah, we do sell it for Christmas, obviously, on our website, wonderbookgames.com.
I'm just kidding.
Everyone check under
Yeah.
your seats because no,
Just make sure you're buying the real one. Okay. Eric, same
Please.
questions for you. What's the most innovative games you ever played? Because I know you're a gamer.
Yeah, so I mean, I love very small designers, but there's also, I think, as far as innovation goes, there's a designer named Cole Worley. He is
Right.
comes up with systems that I cannot believe work. So check out some of his games. They are unreal in the level of nothing about this should be working, and suddenly we're all playing this game together and having a great time. So check out Root, check out Pax Premier. I think those are wonderfully innovative games.
Beautiful. Yeah,
And Kelp,
absolutely.
check out Kelp as well.
And-
I've heard that's really good.
And just like Kelp, I think that Whirly Games and many more, especially these days, games do that theme integration so well. Theme mechanic integration, right? So Holly, and you actually, the question is going to be, which do you have a Christmas tradition? Maybe that has to do with gaming or something around your house. Just to end
Ooh.
it there.
Nothing to do with gaming.
It doesn't have to be
My
gaming,
kids and
but
I like to make gingerbread houses together,
there
decorate
you
gingerbread
go.
houses together. But I do want to
Yeah.
say my favorite game, which is
Oh.
not technically a tabletop game. I'm not sure what it says about me, but I do love Cards Against Humanity.
It's
I do
tabletop,
it.
right?
It's
Card
always a
games
fun
are
game.
into the exactly. Yeah. Beautiful. No, I think that just like making gingerbread houses with your family, tabletop games something that bring us together around the board and face to face, and it's something that is it's such an experience, especially these days, to have and to cherish. Okay, so with that, unless anybody else has anything else to that they would like to say before we go, I want to give a big thank you to Laya from Wonderbow, Eric, and Holly from the USPTO for joining us here today to talk about the counterfeit and help everyone get more information about how to protect yourself, both as a consumer and as a publisher and producer of games. Everybody have a happy holidays. Ciao.
Happy
Thank you.
holidays.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Bye-bye.